Newcastle are making moves in the transfer market.
Wow! Beautiful!
But after a 2-2 draw with Liverpool, Newcastle's season is showing promise. So from the Wissa Masterclass,
hello guys, thank you very much for your amazing support.
to the Elanga arrival, to the midfield general, to the scary stat about this Newcastle squad. As per Join Us, as we'll break it all down and discuss the latest Newcastle United transfer news and the 5 things we learned from Newcastle United to Liverpool 2.
Let's go!
So the first thing we learned was the goalkeeping reassurance between the sticks. New signing Hornacek arrived into a huge game with plenty of eyes on him, and he wasted little time showing exactly why Newcastle brought him in. He made a vital low save in the first half and generally looked like a goalkeeper who was comfortable with the occasion, giving the defense a calm presence behind them. His kicking was particularly impressive, repeatedly launching long but accurate balls towards Newcastle's forwards and turning what could have been simple clearances into genuine attacking opportunities. The numbers backed up what was becoming an increasingly encouraging performance. Hornacek finished with a massive 7.9 rating, making 5 saves, including 4 from inside the box, while also registering 0.97 goals prevented. He added a punch when required and, most importantly, looked composed throughout. Even when Liverpool were awarded a penalty,
Referee from Norway is the strongest official you can put down. This is supposed to be.
he guessed correctly and went the right way. Unfortunately for him, the strike was hit with enough power. For Newcastle supporters, though, the bigger takeaway was the assurance he provided. This wasn't simply a goalkeeper making a few saves. It was a debut that suggested the position could be in safe hands. His shot-stopping distribution and composure all combined to give Newcastle something they desperately wanted from their new arrival: reassurance. Then there was Yoane Wissa, and this was perhaps the biggest surprise of the afternoon. The phrase "like a new signing" is probably one of the most overused descriptions in football, but in Wissa's case, it genuinely felt appropriate. He looked like everything Newcastle hoped they were getting last season but rarely saw: sharp, energetic, physically willing and constantly involved in the game. With 41 touches and a 7.6 rating, Wissa looked razor-sharp both with and without the ball, pressing aggressively, making runs, carrying the ball forward, and importantly, showing a willingness to do the dirty work. His numbers told the same story. Across 89 minutes, Wissa completed 12 of 17 passes, won an impressive 11 duels, made 4 tackles, won 4 fouls and regained possession 3 times. He also managed 3 touches inside the opposition box, created a chance and provided 1 assist, showing that his contribution wasn't limited to running around looking busy. And then the attacking numbers made it even clearer why he was so effective. Wissa registered 4 shots, created 2 big chances, completed a successful dribble and again finished with 11 duels won and 4 fouls won. His movement constantly gave Newcastle an outlet, while his ability to drive forward with the ball helped keep Liverpool's defense occupied. The assist for Willock's goal was the obvious headline, but his overall performance was much more complete than that one moment. It was eventually rewarded with the Premier League Man of the Match award, the first of Wissa's career, and honestly, he earned it.
Hello guys, thank you very much for your amazing support. And like you, we didn't get the win at the end, but what a support, what a atmosphere today. It's been unbelievable. Looking much forward for the season coming up. I think everyone is ready. So thank you very much and away the lads.
This wasn't a performance where he simply scored or produced one magical moment before disappearing. He was involved in virtually everything Newcastle needed from him: pressing, running, battling, creating and attacking. After a difficult period where questions were being asked about what Newcastle were actually going to get from Wissa, this felt like a very timely reminder. Maybe the player Newcastle signed was always in there. He'd just been stuck in traffic on the way to St. James's Park. Then also learned about the Elanga arrival. We saw glimpses last World Cup of the player Newcastle had signed, and now, with the new season underway, those glimpses are beginning to look much more like a pattern. Elanga was a live wire down the right throughout the game, constantly threatening with his pace, and he took his goal brilliantly. The finish came after he absolutely burned past Kirkez before calmly slotting the ball home, clocking an outrageous 34.8 kilometers per hour in the process. Liverpool had conceded inside the opening 5 minutes of a Premier League season for the very first time, and Newcastle had wasted absolutely no time reminding them that this new-look side can hurt you in transition. The goal was also significant personally for Elanga. It was his first Premier League goal for Newcastle in his 33 appearance in the competition, so there must have been a considerable amount of relief behind that celebration. But beyond the goal, there were clear signs of his confidence growing. His link-up play looked sharper, he worked hard at both ends, and he seemed increasingly comfortable taking responsibility in the final third. Elanga finished with a 7.7 rating, scoring 1 goal from a 0.22 xG. He completed 15 of 21 passes, 71%, including 13 of 18 in the opposition half, while attempting 2 shots and getting both on target. He had 32 touches, completed 1 of 2 dribbles, was fouled 3 times and covered 136.2 meters with his carries. It was the sort of performance that showed there is much more to his game than simply being the bloke who runs very fast. And then came the celebration. Elanga and Osula recreated the Asamoah Gyan and Fatawu dance, which was probably the most important tactical innovation of the afternoon. Forget the pressing structure. Newcastle have clearly been working on their goal celebrations. Speaking of Osula, another big shout-out has to go to the young striker. He may not have found the net himself, but he played a huge role in Elanga's goal, producing a perfectly weighted pass to send him through. Osula was a live wire during the opening stages, registering 20 touches, constantly threatening with his movement and giving Liverpool's defenders something to worry about. He eventually took a knock in the second half and had to come off, with Willock replacing him and Wissa moving into the number 9 role. But Osula had already made his contribution. He finished with a 7.1 rating, recording 1 assist, a top speed of 20.8 miles per hour, covering 3.7 miles, completing 4 of 5 passes, 80%, creating 1 chance and 1 big chance, while also producing 2 blocked shots. And let's be honest, his biggest contribution may actually be happening away from the pitch. Apparently, Osula and Willock get their powers from Nigerian food, so according to Newcastle's completely scientific nutritional department, this is apparently what Isak has been missing at Liverpool. Forget protein shakes, get the man some jollof rice. Then came the super sub. Joe Willock entered the game and needed just 110 seconds to put Newcastle ahead. After receiving the ball, he powered forward before producing a beautiful finish, curling it into the Gallowgate with the sort of confidence that makes you wonder why he doesn't do it every weekend. He almost added an assist too, with a clever dinked pass putting Wissa clean through. Willock finished with a 7.7 rating, scoring 1 goal from a 0.09 xG, while creating 1 big chance and registering 1 key pass. He attempted 2 crosses and was perfect with his passing, completing 7 of 7, 100%, including 5 of 5 in the opposition half, 100%, and 2 of 2 in his own half, 100%. He also had 1 shot which had a 0.79 xGOT, and naturally it was the one that ended up in the net. He recorded 15 touches and completed 1 of 2 dribbles. So Newcastle's substitutes didn't simply come on to see the game out, Willock came on and changed it. And that might be one of the biggest positives from the game. Newcastle are beginning to have players capable of changing matches from the bench, while Elanga and Osula are showing that the pace and athleticism Howe has added to this team can make Newcastle absolutely devastating when games open up. New season, new manager, new energy, and apparently Nigerian food is part of the tactical plan. Then moving on to our midfield general, and this was another performance that showed why Newcastle can be so excited about Miley's development. Lewis Miley produced a top-class display, made even more impressive by the fact that he had only played 45 minutes of preseason since breaking his leg in May. Despite that lack of preparation, he looked remarkably comfortable in the middle of the pitch, finishing with a 7.5 rating and 46 touches. He won duel after duel, read the game effortlessly, and looked like he had never been away. Defensively, Miley was everywhere. He recorded 7 defensive contributions, attempted 1 tackle, made 1 interception, 4 clearances, 1 blocked shot, and 6 recoveries. He also won 3 of 4 ground duels and 2 of 3 aerial duels, while committing just 1 foul and, importantly, wasn't dribbled past once. For someone essentially coming straight back from a serious injury, that was an extremely mature defensive performance. And it wasn't just the dirty work. Miley also showed his quality on the ball, playing incisive passes into the final third and rarely giving possession away. He produced 2 key passes, attempted no crosses, completed 30 of 36 passes, 83%, with 9 of 15 passes in the opposition half, 60%, and a perfect 21 of 21 in his own half, 100%. He also completed 1 of 1 long balls, 100%. It was effortlessly efficient, dominant, and controlled, exactly the sort of midfield performance you want from a player who is still only 20. Partnering Miley was new signing Stour, and while there were some early signs of rustiness, there was enough there to suggest Newcastle have another classy young player on their hands. His passing range was slightly off at the beginning, with a few misplaced balls as he tried to settle into the intensity of the game. Sturr finished with 22 of 29 passes completed, 76%, including just 2 of 6 passes in the opposition half, 33%, while completing 20 of 23 in his own half, 87%. His long ball accuracy was 0 of 2, 0%, showing that this wasn't his cleanest performance technically. However, he settled down as the game progressed and worked hard, although there was one moment where he could have done more to close down Gakpo for Liverpool's equalizer. Still, considering the circumstances, there were plenty of promising signs. You could see the talent. He just looked like a young player learning very quickly that Premier League football doesn't give you a warm-up period. Then there was Dedic, his debut, and this was another hugely encouraging performance from a new arrival. He put in a big effort, showed plenty of fight, and grew into the game after diving into a couple of challenges a little too eagerly early on. Crucially, he lasted the entire game and continued trying to drive Newcastle forward while making some important defensive interventions. Dedic finished with 9 defensive contributions, 2 attempted tackles, 6 clearances, 1 block shot and 2 recoveries. He won 4 of 10 ground duels and 1 of 2 aerial duels, while committing 3 fouls and impressively was not dribbled past once. On the ball, he completed 18 of 20 passes, 90%, while recording 51 touches, and he was fouled twice. For a Premier League debut, that was a very encouraging introduction. He wasn't perfect, but he showed the physicality, mentality, and willingness to compete that Newcastle will need from him, and all of this feeds into perhaps the biggest positive from the game. Newcastle were physically dominant. The distance covered, the running, the intensity, and the number of sprints all demonstrated a team willing to put in the work for the new manager. It wasn't just about having talented players. They were prepared to run themselves into the ground for the system. That commitment is particularly encouraging at the beginning of a new era. The reward was seeing Newcastle exploit Liverpool in transition. Liverpool conceded 2 fast break goals in a Premier League game for the first time since matchday 1 of last season against Bournemouth. And remarkably, that was already as many fast break goals as every other team combined had conceded in the opening round of this Premier League season. That tells you something about Newcastle's intensity, but it also tells you something about the direction this team could be heading in. And perhaps the most exciting part is how young this Newcastle squad is. The starting 11 had an average age of just 23.8 years. That is an incredible amount of youth and potential packed into one Newcastle squad. There is experience around them, but the foundation is remarkably young. So while this was only one game, there was something genuinely exciting about watching it. Sturr getting his opportunity, Dedic making his debut, Elanga and Wissa shining, Osula continuing to develop, and Miley already looking established. Newcastle aren't simply trying to win today, they're building a team that could become seriously good tomorrow. Then in some massive transfer news, Newcastle United looked to have finally landed the experienced midfield reinforcement Matthias Scheissel desperately needed, with Nico Gonzalez reportedly agreeing to join the Magpies from Manchester City. According to Fabrizio Romano, Newcastle have reached a verbal agreement with City for a deal worth £47 million plus £3 million in add-ons, while Gonzalez has given the move his approval. In fact, Fabrizio recently doubled down on the claim.
Check this out. Real time, and I can confirm to you my information on Nico Gonzalez. One of the stories of the day, Newcastle have their new midfielder. Everything is being planned in terms of medical test, contract signing, everything has been agreed between Nico, his agent Jorge Mendes, and Newcastle in terms of contract. Everything agreed between the two clubs, Manchester City and Newcastle. My understanding is that Manchester City already gave the green light for the player to go have a medical and sign the contract, so it's now time to schedule everything, and then Nico Gonzalez this week will become a new Newcastle player. They need their quality midfield, they need leadership after losing Tonali and Bruno Guimaraes, and Nico is coming £47 million plus 3 in add-ons.
So if everything now goes to plan, Newcastle are on the verge of completing one of their most important signings of the summer. And this feels different from the other midfield additions Newcastle have made. Sean Sturr and Alaji Bamba are exciting young talents with enormous potential, but Gonzalez arrives with something Newcastle desperately needed after the departures of Bruno Guimaraes and Sandro Tonali: experience. At 24, he is still young enough to fit Newcastle's long-term strategy, but he has already played at the highest level of European football. Gonzalez spent time at Porto before moving to Manchester City, where he made 41 appearances across all competitions last season under Pep Guardiola. That experience should be invaluable to a Newcastle midfield that has suddenly become considerably younger. He also brings a very different profile to the players Newcastle have already recruited. Gonzalez is comfortable operating as a deeper midfielder, has the technical quality to receive the ball under pressure, and possesses the tactical understanding required to control games from the middle of the pitch. His time working under Guardiola should also be hugely beneficial. This isn't a player who needs to learn what elite-level football looks like. He's already lived it. There is even an interesting endorsement from his time at City, where Guardiola reportedly referred to him as his mini Rodri, an indication of the qualities the Spaniard possesses in the deeper midfield role. Of course, expecting him to simply become Rodri would be completely unrealistic, but Newcastle aren't signing him to be Rodri. They're signing him because Gysel needs a midfielder capable of giving the team structure, composure, and physical presence after losing two hugely influential players. And that could make Gonzalez one of the most important additions of the summer. The timing is also excellent. After Sunday's encouraging 2-2 draw with Liverpool, Newcastle showed that there is still plenty to work with under Gysel. But the match also highlighted the importance of adding quality and depth to the squad. Joelinton remains injured, while Newcastle's midfield options have been significantly weakened by the departures of Bruno and Tonali. Gonzalez immediately changes that equation. He can give Gysel a genuine senior option in the center of the pitch while allowing the younger players to develop without being thrown into an enormous amount of responsibility immediately. That's exactly how this recruitment strategy should work. You don't build a squad entirely around potential. You surround the potential with players who already know how to perform at the highest level. And Gonzalez provides that bridge. There's also something encouraging about how quickly Newcastle have moved here. The interest only became public recently, negotiations progressed rapidly, and now Romano is reporting a verbal agreement with the player already giving the green light. After the frustration of losing Victor Munoz and Johan Manzambi, Newcastle fans will understandably want this one wrapped up before celebrating too much. But everything appears to be moving in the right direction. If completed, £47 million plus £3 million represents a significant investment. But Newcastle aren't buying an unproven teenager. They're buying a 24-year-old midfielder with Premier League, Champions League, and elite coaching experience who can contribute immediately. And that is exactly what Newcastle have been crying out for. The young project is still being built with Stur, Bamba, Toure, and Jawen. But Gonzalez feels like the first major sign that Newcastle are also trying to stabilize the present while building for the future. Now, as the original piece says, there is one obvious question left. Find Gysel his number 10. If Newcastle can add an experienced creative attacker to complement Gonzalez, suddenly this summer's rebuild starts looking considerably more balanced. One big piece of the midfield puzzle appears to be falling into place. Now for the next one. Then Newcastle United appear to have reignited their interest in Matías Fernández Pardo, with reports from France claiming that the Magpies have made a concrete move for the Lille attacker. According to L'Equipe, Newcastle have submitted a proposal worth around €40 million, or £34.6 million, plus bonuses for the 21-year-old, with negotiations now underway. This is particularly interesting because Fernández Pardo isn't a completely new name for Newcastle. The Belgian was already on the club's radar alongside Bazoumana Touré, and while Newcastle eventually got their man in Touré, Fernández Pardo remained someone the recruitment team continued to monitor. Now it appears that interest has developed into something more serious. Fernández Pardo enjoyed an impressive 2025-26 campaign, making 41 appearances for Lille and contributing 8 goals and 7 assists. His versatility is arguably his biggest attraction. He can operate across the front three and has the technical ability to play centrally or from either flank. That would give Matías Gysel another flexible attacking option as Newcastle continue rebuilding their squad. And there is an obvious reason Newcastle might be interested despite already signing Touré. The club have lost a significant amount of attacking quality this summer, while Jacob Murphy's future has also remained uncertain. Touré provides a long-term solution on the left, but Newcastle still need to consider how they balance the rest of the attack. Fernández Pardo could potentially give them something different. He isn't simply another traditional winger who wants to stay wide. His ability to move between positions could fit nicely into the more fluid vertical football Gysel is attempting to introduce. However, there is a significant obstacle. Lille don't actually want to sell him. Fernández Pardo is contracted until 2029, and Lille president Olivier Letang has previously made it clear that the club would prefer to keep the Belgian international. The player's position could therefore become crucial. L'Equipe reports that Fernández Pardo is still pushing for a move despite Lille's Champions League football this season. If he continues to make his desire to leave clear, Newcastle's sizable proposal could put Lille in a difficult position. There is also competition. Atletico Madrid have previously shown interest, while RB Leipzig have also been linked with the attacker. Newcastle therefore can't afford to hang around indefinitely if they genuinely believe Fernandes Pardo is the player they want. But this is where Luke Edwards' update is important. While confirming that Newcastle do have an interest and have discussed a deal, Edwards has urged caution and says expectations of Newcastle actually completing the transfer are currently low. That suggests this isn't necessarily a case of Newcastle putting €40 million on the table and waiting for Lille to accept. There is still plenty of work to do. And Newcastle have learned the hard way this summer that getting an agreement with a selling club doesn't necessarily mean getting the player. We saw that with Johan Manzambi, where Newcastle reportedly reached an agreement with Freiburg before Aston Villa accelerated their pursuit and convinced the player to choose Villa Park. The Magpies will therefore need to move decisively if Fernandes Pardo genuinely becomes a priority. Financially, Newcastle's reported €40 million proposal is certainly substantial enough to make Lille think twice, particularly if the player himself is pushing for an exit, but Lille have a long contract protecting them, Champions League football to offer, and no obvious reason to sell cheaply. So while this one is far more credible than a random transfer rumor, we're still some distance away from calling it close. The encouraging part is that Newcastle appear to have made a genuine move rather than simply monitoring the situation. And considering Fernandes Pardo was already on Newcastle's radar before Touré arrived, this feels like a player the recruitment team genuinely likes. Touré may have been the first piece of that attacking rebuild. Fernandes Pardo could potentially become another, but Newcastle will have to convince both Lille and the player to make it happen.